Quinn, NYC is the city's largest provider of shelter and supportive housing. And we are joined this morning by Quinn's president and executive director, Quinn, to discuss her organization and how it's being impacted today. So thank you so much, Christine, for being here.
You know, we know that if this had gone in place, we would have lost immediately close to $5 million for permanent housing. Everyone says they don't want shelters. That would have been for permanent housing. But if it had also cut the pass-through money, the money the federal government gives to the Department of Homeless Services that gives to us, we don't even know what the number would have been.
And how many families, then, would that have impacted through your organization?
Could have affected putting hundreds of families into permanent housing out of shelter. And 30 to 40% of homeless families need what we call supportive housing. It's permanent, but we have caseworkers, social workers on site, people who need a little extra help to thrive independently. It's a well-known model developed actually by the federal government, and this really would have cut 34% of our permanent housing budget.
Wow.
We're talking about would have, could have,
yes,
but did not. And may, but many are feeling this could be a warning shot. So how does Quinn NYC prepare for a worst case scenario?
Well, we're keeping all of our donors informed, letting them know that we may have to go back to them and say, we need your help. We need to generate this funding. But a group like Quinn, we're in a better place because we're larger. We can have a little bit of latitude to figure things out. But smaller groups who don't have the same donor base, they could really be facing, and I don't mean to be dramatic, closing their doors.
Yeah, are you preparing then for this worst case scenario?
Absolutely. I mean, we immediately began communicating with our leadership, with our donors, because this came out of the blue. It's not like the Trump administration is going to ramp things up. That's not what they're like. Now, all of that said, I am really encouraged that you immediately saw a national response. People from across the political spectrum responded, really understood the impact to all kinds of services and pushed this back. That's encouraging. So if they try it again, I think we'll see more of that.
But how long could you survive without that federal funding?
It would be very difficult, particularly with our permanent housing. Very difficult.
They mentioned $5 million.
Yep.
I want to turn now to the ICE raids happening across the tri-state area and the city, of course, too. Are you prepared for ICE potentially coming to your shelter spaces?
We have done a lot of preparing. We have trained our security staff. We have trained our social services staff. You know, the last time Trump was president, ICE showed up at one of the Quinn shelters. And, you know, people will assume that when ICE comes, they come with the proper legal documentation. That's not true. They often show up with a document that looks like a warrant, but is not signed by a federal judge. That's what happened when they came to our shelter. With the support of the Department of Homeless Services, we turned them away and they left. So we have trained everyone on that protocol, and we believe we're as prepared as we can be. But, you know, obviously, if somebody is a criminal, we're not going to stand in the way of them getting arrested and deported. But what this rhetoric and these mass deportations have done is strike fear in the hearts of those individuals who are not criminals, are law-abiding, and came here because they were fleeing terrible poverty, sex trafficking, gun and gang violence, and they are now looking around the corners in fear every day. And many, if not most of these individuals are people who would have qualified for asylum or temporary protective status or are witnesses to a crime and could have gotten a U visa. This is not the way to help these individuals become Americans.
And, you know, a lot of those folks feel so helpless right now and alone.
Yep.
But your organization, you're collaborating with others.
Yes.
With an effort, right? Project Hope, I believe?
Yes, so we've done two things. One, Project Hope. You know, the federal government is following a 180-day plan put out by the Conservative Heritage Foundation. We've countered that with Project Hope, a long list of things the city and state can do to protect New Yorkers from the Trump administration's worst efforts. Also, we're joined together with the New York Legal Assistance Group, and we've created a legal clinic. And we have been putting migrants through the legal process so they can get status and stay here legally.
Quick question for you. New York is a sanctuary city.
Yes.
Some feel, what they've seen these past few days, that may not be actually enforced. In your experience, what would you tell those who have questions about where they stand in terms of safety in the city now?
Well, I would tell them to work closely with social service providers that they're affiliated with. I would tell them to reach out to one of the myriad of legal groups, New York Legal Assistance Group, Legal Aid Society, to get guidance on what they can do. Be careful of scammers. There are people who will present themselves as immigration lawyers who are not. But I want people to know the rhetoric sometimes you hear from leadership is not who New Yorkers really are, and there are people supporting you who want to help you.
All right, Christine, thank you so much for your time this morning.